Hi, my name is Kelly Miller, and I chose to do my thematic unit on weather, focusing mainly on the water cycle. I would open up the thematic unit by dressing up as Mrs. Frizzle and papering a gigantic school bus on the front of my door. That would allow the students that today something new is going to happen, and whenever they step into the bus, their desks are going to be aligned as if they were sitting on a bus 2 by 2 in rows. And I will introduce myself as Mrs. Frizzle and explain to them we're going to take a small field trip into the life cycle of a snowflake or a water droplet and see the different stages of the water cycle. Once we get on our field trip, we'll go ahead and address our math unit, our math calendar math board. Okay, we would establish what day it is, and we would fill in the board with what pattern we chose. Okay, since today is the first was going to be a tornado day, that's number 1. Our next pattern is the sun, rain, cloud, snow, and then our pattern starts all over again. Tornado, sunny, rainy, cloudy, and then today is Monday. A student came up and said that it was going to be snowy, so that was our pattern. They would then say, well, how many days ago was it snowy? And they would count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days ago, it was also snowy. Okay, then we could also post questions as to what day will July start on? And we would have to say July would start on a Tuesday because the 31st is on a Monday. Okay, we could say what day did May end on? We could come up here, and since it's June 1st started on a Saturday, we would know that May 31st would be on a Friday. Okay, next over here we would talk about what we were seeing outside of our school bus. We would say that since it is June, it's hot outside, okay, since it is summer. And I guess it could be sunny, maybe a little bit windy, but 100% it's going to be warm. Okay, our temperature on top of our dashboard reads 90 degrees outside, so that's going to be our word of the day. Our word of the day is then plugged over here at the number of the day, and we have made 90 using tally marks, and then we would establish how many of our stars go in what place value. Since we have 9 tally marks in the tens place, we put 9 stars in our tens bucket. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, and we would put 1 more. Okay, if our weather outside was 111, we would have 1 in our hundreds, 1 in our tens, and then 1 star in our ones bucket, and it would be 111 degrees outside. Okay, but today it is only 90, so we're going to put 9 stars in our tens bucket. Okay, then we address time. We have graphing questions where students have to prove how they got their answers and pick apart the chart. Okay, so we pulled the class to ask what their favorite type of weather is. Okay, and then we charted that like so. Our first question was, how many more students like sunny weather than rainy weather? This student underlined how many more because that signifies a subtraction problem. And then they boxed in sunny weather and rainy weather because those are the 2 parts of the chart that we're addressing. And they put 11 people liked sunny and 5 people liked rainy, and they subtracted that problem. Another question here, it says, what type of weather did the students like the most and least? They boxed in most and least because it's asking a 2-part question. So they put 2 dashes here to understand that there was 2 answers to this problem. Okay, they liked sunny the most, and they proved their answer by putting most over here and least over here to windy. We have 2 more questions there, and we would pull a different stick with a different name for each question. So that way each day there's a randomness to it, and each child will get a different question each day. Could be time, could be on the calendar, could be weather, could be reading a thermometer, a graph, could be, for instance, the science question asking what form of matter does water take on when it's hail, ice, and snow. That would be the form of solid. Rain is a liquid, and steam is a gas. So it could be a science problem or tally marks, or it could be a plot chart. You just never know in the calendar math. Okay, next we would go to our calendar, or I'm sorry, our folder that we have did over the course of this unit. We did different things such as our folder game, and I chose to do that on measurements of units such as cups, lengths, widths, heights, different things that you use for measure. Just because with science and the weather unit, you choose different things to measure it with. Water can be measured with cups, or if you're measuring how much a lake has improved, you can say feet. It's come up 5 feet. If you're measuring how much snow you got, depending on how much it is, it could be inches, could be centimeters. So there is a different metric of unit. If you're saying how much snowfall is on top of a house, you may say that it's a ton of snow on top of my shed that allowed it to fall in. And that is, explaining how much weight it is. Okay, then we would address how do we measure speed of the wind? How do we measure rain? How do we, what units or what instruments do we use to measure these different things? And we would address that too. But here in the folder game for our math unit, we did measurements. On this side, we have the different types of measurements, and then they would have to match them up their definitions to find out which is accurate. Over here, you use these little printouts to say which one goes with which. How would we measure the different things? We measure a person in feet. We can measure how much a dog weighs in pounds. Okay. This is a quart of milk. Okay, this of course is a gallon. We measure a pencil in inches. We would do an elephant in tons. And we would measure an airplane, how wide it is in yards. And then the cup is right there. So that's what that would look like. Okay, and for my science center, let's go to this section of my binder here. For my science center, I chose to do another example of the water cycle. This just consisted of taking a baggie with your science journal. Let me hold it up here so you can see all the different things about it. And with a Sharpie or a paint pen, you draw the water cycle on a gallon-sized baggie. This allows the students to see what stage of the water cycle their colored water is. I put about a quarter cup of water mixed in with some blue dye, and you can see that whenever it was taped to the window, it was drawn up by the sun through evaporation, and it did go over to condensation and then proceeded to precipitation, where it did fall back down again. This is a great experiment in Science Station for my 3rd grade team. Each student throughout the thematic unit would come over to their science journal during Science Center times, and they would draw day 1. They would draw a picture of the science water cycle. Okay, and then they would draw their, make their baggie, tape it to a window, and then on Monday they would say what their observation was, being that they just made it, everything would still be in groundwater, okay, on the very bottom of the baggie. And then day 2, it may be starting to draw up the water into the sun, being in form of evaporation. So that's pretty exciting. They get to see the different stages of the water cycle in their own classroom. So this is pretty exciting, and they get to compare it with other students who may have put their baggie in a more shaded area. They may not get the same results. Okay, and then here is all of this for my binder. Science unit can be, a thematic unit can be very exciting. You can introduce weather in reading and in science, math, really in all avenues of education. Brain Pop Jr. is an excellent source for videos. Molby and his team up and the kids really respond to it. As well as Brain Pop Jr., you can also use Go Noodle for science and weather related resources. It's an excellent source of resources. Thank you so much for joining me for this thematic unit on weather.